Another year will pass without LSU in the college football playoffs. So, how close are the Tigers to returning? I have some thoughts. Let's discuss. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the best ways to help us grow is by commenting below. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. A lot of people have asked about LSU offensive coordinator Joe Sloan. Brian Kelly was asked to evaluate his first-year play caller. You'll hear what he said, and I have some thoughts. The defensive issues for LSU: talent or coaching? Brian Kelly has his thoughts, and I have mine. That's coming up as well. But I wanted to start with kind of a big picture question, because I think this is maybe the question I've been asked the most since LSU lost 42-13 to Alabama on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. And it's considering the Tigers now will go another year, very likely, without a college football playoff appearance. How close is LSU to a return? And why aren't they closer in year 3 under Brian Kelly? You know, Saturday in many respects was one of those balance of power games, a measuring stick game. Call it what you want. But basically, you kind of learn where you stand in the pecking order and the hierarchy. Like when LSU goes to South Carolina and wins, you assert yourself as a better program still than South Carolina. You lose to Alabama, you kind of figure you're still not there yet. But then there's a very impressive win over Ole Miss. And so it's just one of those interesting games. And I think what is very clear coming out of Saturday is that LSU is not ready to be a college football playoff contender. And quite honestly, we all should have seen it, and some of us did to a degree. I thought LSU had a chance to get to 10-2 if they won the opener against SC. They didn't, so I thought they'd be 9-3. They still have work to do to get there. But when you think about it, you lost a Heisman Trophy winner, and you lost 2 first-round picks at receiver, and you lost your Broyles Award finalist offensive coordinator, and you had the worst defense in the history of the program a year ago. So how much really did you improve? There's a lot of those questions that should have been red flags. And in the offseason and the talking season, they really were. And we talked about them a lot. But when the season comes, you tee it up and kick it off. Everyone wants to believe in the best for your team and your program. If I could start, though, I want to debunk the narrative that Brian Kelly can't win big games, because I think that's silly and it's just flatly false. Brian Kelly, and you heard that a lot from Notre Dame people, and my contention is and always has been that was a Notre Dame problem, not a Brian Kelly problem. And for disclosure, for those that don't know, my brother went to Notre Dame. I lived there for a year. I went to Holy Cross, which is, yes, it's the Rudy School. I went to Holy Cross for a year, lived in South Bend. There's a lot of shared synergies with the programs with the universities, because it's run by the same priests, the Holy Cross priests. So I had classes at Notre Dame. I used the library at Notre Dame, the workout facility at Notre Dame. We had student tickets at Notre Dame. We're kind of like Notre Dame light. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the goings on there. And the truth about Notre Dame is take Brian Kelly out of it. Their issues of competing nationally predated Brian Kelly. Look at every major bowl game they were in where they got blasted. The 2000 season made the Fiesta Bowl. They lost 41-9 to Oregon State. I was at that game. The 05 season, they went to the Fiesta Bowl and got blown out by 2 touchdowns by Ohio State. A year later, they went to the Sugar Bowl and, of course, lost to LSU 41-14. That was all prior to Brian Kelly getting there. Notre Dame recruiting, or the inability to recruit at Notre Dame, for a lot of reasons. It's a crappy town in Northwest Indiana. The weather's awful. There's not a lot to do in South Bend. It's 8,000 students. Everyone lives on campus. It takes a very specific type of student and student athlete that would want to go to Notre Dame. And on top of that, there's massive academic requirements that they don't lower for student athletes. And unless and until that changed, it was going to be very hard to get elite level athletes 1 to 85 on your roster to be able to compete for a national championship. Notre Dame lowered its ceiling but not their expectations. And that is why Brian Kelly left for LSU, because when you're at LSU, you have the opportunity to recruit a roster that can compete for a national championship. Brian Kelly won big games. Brian Kelly got Notre Dame to the BCS championship game. Brian Kelly got Notre Dame to 2 college football playoffs. In the time at LSU, he beat Bama in 2022. He beat Ole Miss a month ago. Yes, Brian Kelly has won big games. The narrative that he can't win a big game is silly and quite honestly just false. The better question is, why isn't LSU's roster better in year 3? And that is a very fair question. When you look at LSU's last 3 coaches that all won national championships, Nick Saban did it in year 4, Les Miles did it in year 3, Ed Ogeron did it in year 3. So here we are in year 3 of Brian Kelly, and you might say, well, why do they seem like they're not close? I would say, in part, what Brian Kelly inherited is certainly more resembled what Nick Saban inherited in 2000 than what Les or Ed inherited. Remember, Nick Saban inherited a program that was off back-to-back losing seasons. They won 4 games in 98, 3 games in 99, and then in came Nick. Les Miles inherited an amazing situation from Nick Saban where they were a year removed from a national championship. And then Ed Ogeron, while Les faltered, the roster that Ed Ogeron inherited was amazing. It was an NFL roster. That 2016 team, remember, you had Leonard Fournette and Darius Geis and Darrell Williams and DJ Chark and Russell Gage and Will Clapp and Ethan Posick. I mean, Foster Moreau, Arden Key. My goodness, you were loaded. Devon Gottschall was on that defensive line. Kendall Beckwith, Duke Riley, Deion Jones, Tre'Davious White, Dante Jackson, Jamal Adams. It was an NFL team. 2016 was an NFL roster that Ed Ogeron inherited. This now was not that. Brian Kelly inherited a team that had 39 scholarship players for the bowl game and went back-to-back, 5-5 and then 6-7 in consecutive seasons. What Brian Kelly inherited, he had a long way to go. But he did score some early wins, getting Jaden Daniels. Brian Kelly gets credit for Jaden Daniels. They hit on some of those defensive transfers in 2022 that helped them transition successfully. Greg Brooks and Joe Fouché and Jark Bernard Converse and Mekhi Garner. Some of those guys were immediately impactful and helped LSU transition very quickly. The problem is you lost all those guys after 1 year, and you missed on the transfers the next year. But I would say even more so than some of those portal misses in year 2, the early mistakes Brian Kelly made that set you back were 2 primary ones. Number 1 was making Brian Polian his recruiting coordinator, because Brian Polian didn't understand recruiting or culture in Louisiana. And it bit you. It bit you in that first recruiting class, and it set you behind. And to Brian Kelly's credit, he recognized it after 1 year and moved Polian out of that role and moved Frank Wilson in. And since then, look at what your subsequent recruiting classes have been. Talk about that more in a bit. The other was Corey Raymond. In not retaining Corey Raymond and bringing in Robert Steeples, that was a gigantic whiff. You saw a mass exodus of young talent out of your secondary. Eli Ricks left. Dwight McGlothern left. You had recruited well in the secondary, and those guys left the cupboard bare and necessitated the portal approach for those 2 subsequent seasons. Now Corey Raymond's back, and it's no surprise. You've got the number 1 cornerback in the country, and DJ Pickett committed. You've got another elite level corner, top 5 corner out of Texas committed. You've got the top 2 corners in Louisiana committed. I mean, it's not a surprise. Corey Raymond knows what he's doing in recruiting defensive backs. So Brian Kelly deserves credit. He recognized those mistakes and he fixed them. He promoted Frank Wilson to recruiting coordinator. He brought back Corey Raymond. He hired Bo Davis. He fired Matt House and brought in Blake Baker. He brought in Kevin Peoples. All of that, you fix the staff, and not only are they great coaches, they're great recruiters as well. And then look at the recruiting that you've done. Just look at your 2024 class, the current freshmen. You had 2 5-stars. You flipped 4 A&M players. Look at the freshmen that are making an impact. Caden Durham, Dominic McKinley, Deshaun Spears, PJ Woodland, Gabe Relaford, Trades Green, Ahmad Bro, Aaron Burrell, the place kicker. Like, you have true freshmen making an impact, and that's going to serve you well in 25 and 26 and maybe 27. Look at the 25 class that you currently have committed. 3 5-stars. That's as many as anybody in the country. You've got the number one player in the country, the number one quarterback in the country, the number one running back in the country, the number one cornerback in the country. Like, it's starting to look like it's supposed to look. And then in 2026, that's a bumper crop in the state. You have 6 players in the top 70 in the country from Louisiana. Think about that. You have 6 top 70 players in America in Louisiana. All of them are either committed to or thought to be heavy leans to LSU. You are putting together back-to-back-to-back classes that are going to help your roster look like it's supposed to look to be able to win a national championship. So it's getting there. The problem is you just have to be patient. And I don't think people are patient. Look, I've done the Bama is burning bit now on my radio show for 10 months. And people, of course, are saying, well, is LSU burning? No, LSU is not burning. This is just what LSU is. And this is what LSU has been for a quarter century now since Nick Saban showed up. It's been 24 seasons. This is year 25 since Nick showed up. It's been 24 seasons. You've had 13 double-digit win seasons, but you've had 17 seasons with at least 3 losses. 13 double-digit win seasons, but 5 8-win seasons, 4 9-win seasons. You had a 6-win season and a 5-win season. That was the COVID year. But the point is, more often than not, you're not a championship contender. Usually about every 5 to 7 years, boom, you pop a big season. 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, until things derailed with Leonard in Tuscaloosa. Then it was 2019. It's just about once every half decade or so you pop a big year. But you got to get the roster looking like that first before you can get there. It's not there today. But it's very clear with the recruiting class that are freshmen this year, the class you're about to sign in a month, the prospects you have for 2026. Yeah, it's going to get there. And with a better roster, Brian Kelly would not only be able to win big games, but win the biggest game like each of his 3 predecessors have. So let's look a little deeper on the defensive side of the ball, because Brian Kelly was asked about the defense and why they continue to struggle. And I want to delve into that as we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. There it is. Excuse me. Hey, LSU fans, time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've already pooled more than $20,000 to support players on Roy. It's micro deposits that lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to the athletes you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player that you choose. So unlike a collective, you know exactly where your support is going. You can even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. And the best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. So this week, I'm supporting Emory Jones. He was the highest rated player for LSU on Pro Football Focus. And of course, sprung that big run from Caden Durham on the second offensive snap. There weren't many highlights after that. Pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. Even just $10 makes a difference. So let's show Emory Jones the love and keep him connected to LSU. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. You can win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. If you're already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return_on_you for more info. Again, that's at Roy_return_on_you. Roy, support the players. Change the game. So now that we've established kind of where LSU is as a program, it's an interesting jumping off point because Brian Kelly, when he met with reporters on Monday, was asked in a respect, how can you improve over the final 3 games when it feels like in some respects through 9 games you are what you are?
What do we have to do to help us? And that's run the ball better. That's going to be something that can happen right away. What can we do to help in the quarterback run game? You know, Can we play more multiple coverage looks? Can we be in different fronts? I know if you watch, we played some 5-down defensive fronts, to help in those situations. So I think there's always the opportunity to grow and get better in the season. And as I said, there's a lot for this football team to look forward to. We've got, the opportunity to, again, finish the season strong and look towards a minimum of a 10-win season again. And that's important to this program, a standard that has been set that we want to continue to work towards that goal.
It is a standard. It is not the most important goal. He didn't say it was the most important goal, but he said it's important. 9-3 in a bowl win is not something that people get very excited about. And that's all expectation. If you win 9 games every year and win a bowl game at South Carolina, they're building a statue for you. At LSU, they want you fired and wondering why you're paying this coach $100 million. Brian Kelly knew what he signed up for. So, yes, I would love to see LSU finish strong, finish 9-3, win the bowl game, get to 10, because it beats the alternative of going the other way and losing and going 8-4 and maybe a worse bowl game. I will remind you, as we compared Nick Saban, Nick in his first year at LSU went to the Peach Bowl. In his second year, of course, they won the SEC championship as a 3-loss team, by the way. And then in year 3, in 2022, they lost 5 games. They went 8-5. They were 8-4 and lost the bowl game to Texas. And then his 4th year, they won the national championship. But when I look at this LSU defense, and that's really the question we have. And yes, there's issues on offense, but really we're looking at what's happened over the last 5.5 quarters defensively to LSU against the running quarterback. And realistically, the truth is, on the defensive side of the ball, you're not great. Personnel-wise. I had somebody ask me, how was Tennessee and South Carolina able to stop Jalen Milroe and LSU wasn't? Surely they're not better. Yes, they are. South Carolina has 2 freak show defensive ends. Really good interior players that are better than LSU's. Tennessee might have the best defensive front 7 in football. They're the only team in the SEC that hasn't allowed an opponent to score 20 points yet this year. Tennessee is allowing 12 points per game. They're better than you. Now, you can have a conversation about Vanderbilt, why Vanderbilt had success. And part of that is Vandy had a big lead, and so Milroe didn't run it as much, 7 carries for 10 yards. And so that could be game flow. But let me remind you, just because you wear the jersey and the helmet doesn't mean you look like a championship defense. Like, if I asked you the question legitimately, who's a draftable player on this LSU defense? For what it's worth, Mel Kiper has his big board, right? It's the top 25 prospects overall. Then he ranks everybody by position, the top 10 at every position. He has 2 LSU defensive players in the top 10 at their position. Harold Perkins, Braden Swinson. That's it. 2. And Perkins hasn't played since September. So it doesn't look like championship defenses. I mean, think about 2019. Derek Stingley, the highest drafted cornerback ever. Kayvon Chasson, first-round pick. Patrick Queen, first-round pick. Rashard Lawrence was a 4th-rounder. He's starting in the NFL. Neil Farrell was a mid-round pick by the Raiders, still playing in the NFL. Christian Fulton was a 2nd-round pick. Grant Delpit was a 2nd-round pick. Jacob Phillips was a 3rd-round pick of the Browns. Braden Fajoko made an NFL team. You had Kerry Vincent and Jacoby Stevens, who was a 5-star. Like, you had NFL talent all over that defense. Go back to 2011. Barkevius Mingo was a 1st-round pick. Sam Montgomery was an All-American. We know why he didn't get drafted. Benny Logan was a 3rd-round pick who started a long time in the NFL. Michael Brockers was a 1st-round pick. Kevin Minter was a 2nd-round pick. Mo Claiborne was a top 10 pick. Eric Reed was a 1st-round pick. Y'all, I just rattled off more 1st-round picks than LSU has draftable players on this team. Maybe Savion Jones is a day 3 guy. You're not talented enough. So why aren't you? Points back to what we started the show here with. It was some early misses by Brian Kelly. And yeah, look, you had some misfortune. What if Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith returned this year. This defense looks dramatically different on the interior. They didn't. But I can look ahead at young guys that you're very excited about. Look ahead to Jacoby and Guillory returning next year. Another year bigger, stronger, more developed for Dominic McKinley. I can look at potentially a 5-star like Jakeem Stewart coming in. There's a lot of reason to look at that position and go, okay, it's going to look like it's supposed to look soon. Gabe Relaford, a true freshman, is a stud. Kalaj Cobbin's going to be a problem off the end. Deshaun Womack keeps getting better. He'll be a junior next year. You have some young guys that keep getting better. You can be excited about Devon Keys and Xavier Atkins at linebacker and Whit Weeks being the junior next year. And a guy like Ashton Stamps in his junior season next year, and PJ Woodland as a sophomore, and DJ Pickett coming in as the 5-star number 1 cornerback in the country, and guys at safety like Deshaun Spears and Kylan Jackson and Javen Toviano, and then all the young guys you have coming in. And it's one of the questions I asked Brian Kelly on Monday. We talked about it at the time, but in that first month of the season, they rotated so many guys, in particular in the secondary. And they went into that open date after the South Alabama game, and they were committed to saying, all right, we're going to watch the film, determine who the guys are we can count on, and we're not going to rotate as much. And it's very clear that that's what they've done. The snap counts at this point in the season have gone to the veteran players. They made the decision that they were going to play veteran guys, in particular in the secondary. They're playing Sage Ryan and Jordan Gilbert at safety, and they're playing Major Burns at the star position. They're playing Zy Alexander at cornerback. They made the decision they were going to go with the veteran guys, and that's perfectly fine. But when you go back-to-back games where the defense has struggled as mightily as it has, it's also fair to look and say, okay, in the month since you made this decision, have young guys like Deshaun Spears gotten better? Let me illustrate Spears, for example. Spears played 2 snaps against Southern Cal. Against Nichols, he played 28. Then he started. 44 snaps against South Carolina, 37 against UCLA, 37 against South Alabama. They go into their open date, come back against Ole Miss. 3 snaps against Ole Miss. 5 snaps against Arkansas. 13 snaps against A&M. That's when Jordan Gilbert got injured. And then 8 snaps against Alabama. Y'all, is it time to look at the young guys and say, it's your opportunity? And I asked Brian Kelly that, and he kind of took it a different direction.
We have, from a defensive standpoint, Matt, what do we have to do from a defensive standpoint, Matt, it is all hands on deck. If we feel like you can help us, we have already identified the players that if they can help us, the 4-game situation relative to redshirting is out the window. So if we feel like there's a player that can come in and help our defense, we've already talked to the young man. We've already got clearance. We've already said, can we play you? And they've said, yes, I'm not worried about my red shirt. So anybody that plays from now on out, it's that they've got games remaining not to hit that 4-game threshold, or they've given us clearance to do that. We're going to play them. So this isn't like, hey, let's try to redshirt somebody for next year. This is all hands on deck. Anybody that can contribute or help this football team, we're going to put them on the field.
Makes you wonder, are guys like Deshaun Spears, Kylan Jackson, Javen Toviano, some of those young athletic guys with a higher ceiling that maybe were responsible for some of the coverage busts and misassignments earlier in the year, are you at a point now where you can trust some of those younger guys with the higher ceiling? Eventually, how do they get better if they don't play? Might find out here over these final 3 weeks. We'll knock out our final break, come back, and I do want to let you hear what Brian Kelly had to say in evaluating Joe Sloan in his first year as LSU's offensive coordinator. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One other criticism I've heard a good bit from LSU fans is play calling. Now, that's a pretty common criticism that a lot of fans have. And I have a very common response or standard response. If you want to criticize play calling, okay, but you have to give me a play. You have to give me an example of something you don't like. I think sometimes fans get in an echo chamber and speak in generalities like, why do you run the ball so much? Or LSU throws on first down, it's incomplete. They run it on second down for no gain. Well, sometimes that's explainable, and it doesn't always happen that way. You could recognize it if you're just charting, and then you look for confirmation bias. You make something up in your mind, and then when you see it, you say, see, that's all they do, and you don't necessarily pay attention to the entire game. I'm not telling you that play calling has been excellent or flawless or anything of the sort. I'm just saying I tend to push back a little bit when fans say play calling stinks, because there's also a lot that goes into that. You don't know what the play call was. What if the quarterback missed a read? What if somebody missed a block and that's why the play didn't work when it was actually open downfield? There's a lot of things that can happen with respect to a play call that you don't know unless you know the call and how it was actually executed or supposed to be. But Brian Kelly was asked Monday after the Alabama game to evaluate LSU first-year offensive coordinator Joe Sloan.
I don't evaluate coordinators during the season. I think everybody, gets a chance to, second guess a play call here or there. That's the nature of the business, right? What we want to be is more consistent in the running game. And I think I've made that clear. And we've got to, clearly do that. And Joe understands that. And so the focus has been, and it was going into this game, to create more opportunities in the run game. I thought we did that. We need to do more of it. I thought we created more misdirection within the offense. We need to do more of it. So sequencing the run game with the passing game is absolutely crucial. So we can take some of the pressure, as I've mentioned in other press conferences, off of Nussmeier. So we don't throw it 50 times. We need more balance within the offense.
I do think play calling is an art. How you weave plays in and out and set up things for future success, set up action to come back to it, to run another play off of that later. You're running something in the first quarter with the expectation of running something off of that in the third quarter. It is an art, and it's a design, and it's something that play callers get very good at over time. And I think Joe Sloan will continue to get better at that. I think Joe's a very smart offensive guy. And listen, LSU is averaging over 30 points per game. You're averaging 30 a game. You're 7th in the country in pass offense. You're 113 in rush offense, which is a problem. We all understand that. But this is an LSU team averaging 30 points per game right now with a competent defense. You could be undefeated right now. As odd as that is to say, but you couldn't get a stop at the end of the game against Southern Cal. Could look obviously at what happened against Texas A&M, where you had a double-digit lead midway through the third quarter, and then even with 2 weeks to prepare, you were unable to stop Jalen Milroe from running for 185 and 4 touchdowns when you knew that's exactly what he and they were going to do. Again, I'm not saying Joe Sloan's been flawless. I'm not saying he's been perfect or great, but I think, given the circumstance and how one-sided your offense has been and lopsided toward throwing the football and really your inability to establish a run, I think it's been a pretty strong season to be out there 7th in the country in passing offense and scoring 30 a game. If you could fix the turnovers and just be competent at stopping a running quarterback, you could be undefeated. Or at least one loss, certainly. You could certainly have lost Alabama. But you had a double-digit lead in the second half against A&M, and you led in the fourth quarter against Southern Cal. Those were very winnable games. And your outlook on the season would be dramatically different. You know what you got to work on. Got 3 games to do it. We'll see how it goes, and we'll be talking about it right here. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And remember, one of the best ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. And of course, let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.